people, this is News 24/7. I, Kumar Smith, would like to bring you right into the hot debate of the week. Can Bollywood go global? So we have on conference Dr. Colin from Harvard University, and here to join the conversation we have the two most dominant film producers from Hollywood, Katie Jones, and from Bollywood, Alia Fatoush.
Namaste.
And without wasting any more time, let's head over to Dr. Collins, live from Harvard University.
Thank you for having me, Kumar. Let's talk about the film industry. So the industry is knowledge-based, where talent is crucial and creativity is very high. It's currently a billion-dollar business spread globally and divided within different players, the major ones being Bollywood and Hollywood. I'm going to use HIP's framework to explain what has driven the film industry in the past. You can have a look here. I'm going to talk about the government drivers first of all. So the film industry initiated in Europe after the First and Second World War. Production of films in Europe decreased, which is why Hollywood started filling in the gaps. In India, colonialism ended, and people started watching more movies, which led to the development of their film industry. In Soviet Union, after the Cold War and communism, there was a ban on Hollywood films, so people started watching Bollywood films, which promoted their culture. And from a large number of Indians, about 20 million immigrants migrated from Southeast Asia to different countries, which led to a further spread of their Indian film culture. Now let's have a look at the market drivers. So Hollywood gained universal appeal because a lot of American movies started being produced in the UK because of lower costs, and also a lot of British actors starred in those movies. In India, the foreign influence increased by massive amounts because of international film festivals that were held in Mumbai. Due to this, Indian filmmakers, they actually derived their inspiration from EU movies. India started becoming popular abroad as well, and a lot of Indian actors started working in Hollywood movies. Like Anil Kapoor, he worked in Mission Impossible 3. So let's take a look at the competitive drivers. Before the First and Second World War, France was a major player in the film industry with a market share of 70%. Hollywood dominated the film industry after, and in terms of commercial success and competition, Hollywood was the main player. The competitors here were the UK, India, and France. So the US had more power over France, as there was a high demand for blockbuster films, which US sold only in packages with the garbage movies. So in France, the cinema has less pace and less budget for foreign films, which is why they concentrated more on art and traditional films. In the UK, the concentration was more on theatre production, and a lot of British actors starred in Hollywood films, and the UK talent moved to Hollywood. In the meantime, in India, the film industry was growing rapidly in Mumbai and was becoming a major competitor for the Hollywood industry. Let's lastly look at the cost drivers. So Hollywood films have a high production cost and a high sunk cost, and they need to expand in order to recoup their investment. Bollywood is looking to increase the profitability of their movies, enabling them to reinvest in infrastructure, technological advancements for their film production. Lastly, the star concept emerged between 1960 to 2000s, which increased the liking of films and associations. This meant that there was going to be a high cost to the film industry, which had to be matched by higher sales volume.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. So Alia, we know that you have written a book about globalization of film industry.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, do you think the film industry is global?
Yes, I absolutely think so. A global industry is defined by global markets, global production, and a global product that appeals to a global market. Both the Bollywood, the European film industry, and Hollywood do appeal to a global market because in all of the three, international actors star. So the production, most of all Hollywood movies, is spread around the world. So Hollywood movies are sometimes produced in Asia or in Egypt or in Europe, the same way European movies are produced around the world. And that's why I think that the global industry nowadays is for sure global.
Katie, you have been working in the film industry from decades. Do you think Bollywood is a competitive threat or opportunity for Hollywood?
Well, I think that Hollywood and Bollywood generally have very different target audiences, so I don't think they pose as direct threats to each other. However, Bollywood's youth is increasingly becoming interested in westernized content and westernized culture, so Hollywood is definitely a threat to Bollywood. However, also Bollywood is kind of facing, they have a lack of innovative film ideas, so they are looking to Bollywood for inspiration. So I believe that together they create more opportunities for each other than they do threats. They definitely have interest. There's interest from both sides. Hollywood could increase costs of production, reach a larger market, and kind of get innovative ideas, whereas Bollywood is looking for funding and a larger market as well.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Kumar. In order to do an analysis, I'm going to have to look at the Porter's 5 forces. First one here is the threat of new entrants. So there's not really a threat of new entrants because there aren't really any competitors and it dominates the film industry. The amount of studios is also limited. The funding comes from different areas, but it's less organized than Hollywood. Moving on to the bargaining power supplier, there's a high level of power because there's an abundance of actors that are employed from all over the world. And since there's so many actors, only the famous and the big actors get paid a good amount of money. Moving on to the threat of substitute products. The pirated DVDs appear on the market even before the movies in theaters. And copyright infringement is a major problem. Piracy is a major problem in India. And there's not many major substitutes as Bollywood controls the Indian market itself. Moving on to the bargaining power of buyers, there's a medium level of power from the buyers because a lot of films are already available in the market before even their release, so pirated DVDs, but only the people who want to see quality films, and they go to the cinema to watch the movies. Okay, so final one is competitive rivalry. Bollywood is the largest film producer in the area, and its biggest competitor is Hollywood, but it's different markets. As opposed to Hollywood, Bollywood is in a class of their own. Hollywood produces movies, thrillers, and stuff, but Bollywood goes mostly with musicals, and I think that's about it.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. And Anya, do you agree with Dr. Collins' assessment?
Yes, I do. As you can see, the Bollywood industry, the traditional Bollywood industry is not a threat to Hollywood. It is still really weak on different point of views, but we do think that it's going to develop further, and it's moving in a direction of being able to compete with Hollywood in the future.
Thank you. And now that we have a closer look at the industry, Kelly, what do you think is the best strategy for Bollywood to go global?
I think we can answer that question by kind of looking at Bollywood's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So some of the strengths include they have a very, very large domestic audience as well as a large NRI consumer base, around 20 million. They have very low cost of production and a growing upper middle class. So the weaknesses, well, the film industry is very, very segmented, so it's hard to kind of find movies that will fit everyone. There's a lack of distribution and penetration in the lower socioeconomic classes, and there are very low revenues and very low profitability in the domestic market. Also, the quality of Bollywood movies is kind of decreasing. Right, so some of the opportunities include that Bollywood has very bright global perspectives. Like I said before, Hollywood is looking to Bollywood for inspiration for new movie ideas. Also, even though I said that the fragmentation is a weakness, it could also be seen as an opportunity because it allows Bollywood to target different audiences and create more revenue. So some of the threats include piracy is very, very dominant in the Bollywood film industry, and there's a lack of quality content films. There's also kind of the alienation of lower middle class, who with this whole westernization feel secluded from, they want to see the more classic Bollywood movies. So what is Bollywood trying to achieve with this strategy to go global? They want to increase and develop a new target audience, as well as kind of take measures to satisfy domestic demands, and they want to increase profitability and revenues. So how could they do this? I think it would make sense for them to partner up and do partnerships with Hollywood, where writers and producers are 50-50 American and Indian. So do crossover movies like Bender, like Beckham, which was a huge success. So this would allow for the coolness of the Western industry to kind of, be more dominant in the movie, as well as preserving the authenticity of Bollywood, because it has been criticized in movies like Slumdog Millionaire that the culture really was taken out of it. So it will also be more financially viable, and they would satisfy the non-residential Indians who make up for 20 million people. So they would also, with this strategy, keep the interests of the Indian youth and kind of ease the Western society into Bollywood culture. And then eventually they could maybe go on to make their own Bollywood movies that would attract other target audiences as well. They would overall also increase the revenue and profitability just because it is spread into more, more people will be interested and will come across to many audiences. And they could then reinvest the earnings that they made in the film with the films to improve kind of infrastructure and film quality and content domestically. So they would also satisfy the lower and middle class that I talked about before.
There will still be
Because
those traditional Indians that want to watch the traditional movie, and those are millions of people that are still gonna look for their traditional content, their musical, their colors, and everything else. But there needs to be another industry, another production that satisfies all the other Indians that are growing more and more.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you. And finally, if they were to go on with that strategy, what do you think would happen to Hollywood and Bollywood?
So, in my opinion, what I see coming in India is that there's going to be an increased cultural gap between the traditional population and the westernized youth, where the traditional population is going to feel more and more alienated by the Hollywood movies, and are going to remain with their traditional contents and look for their traditional contents in the movies that they're going to watch. The traditional Hollywood movie, however, is going to be a niche market globally, because the westernized youth is going to look for Hollywood contents and westernized contents, as well as the increasing immigrants worldwide are going to look for westernized contents in their Bollywood movies. So what is going to happen is that there's going to be Bollywood movies with maybe musicals but Hollywood storylines.
Exactly, and also as Bollywood and Hollywood converge, the differences will reduce and they will kind of begin to follow similar patterns in movies. And also globally, the income gap and the gap within the social classes will increase, and that Bollywood will kind of mirror that development. And
That's all we said.
I'm Kumar Smith and you are watching News 24/7.